When the Republicans take over the House, January 3rd, is it the 3rd? There's a woman there who Representative Virginia Foxx of North Carolina, 2 X's on her name, Virginia Foxx, North Carolina. She is a loudmouth, screeching opponent of the Biden administration's student debt relief plan. And she wants to be, she has led, I should say, the Republican minority, in effect now, on the House Committee on Education and Labor since 2017. This cretin has been there. And she's the top candidate to chair that committee when the Republican majority takes over in January. She has said she would end the Department of Education if given the chance. This is a Christian terrorist, just like the super Orthodox Jews in northern New York City, who continue to insist that their kids be educated in religious schools, in the yeshivas, that don't teach them anything about the real world. I'm just reading a piece about this in this morning's New York Times about these yeshivas and what they're doing to the Orthodox, the super Orthodox Jewish children who are leaving these schools with absolutely no knowledge of anything. So I rail against the Christians because the Christians are in control. But Orthodox Jews are doing the same thing. It's just that there aren't that many ultra-Orthodox Jews, and I don't think there are any in control of the U.S. government or any branch of the U.S. government. But I digress. This crazy woman, Virginia Foxx of North Carolina, who wants to abolish the Department of Education, and it doesn't say this in the piece at Truth Out, but it's a given. When these Christian terrorists take over these organizations, whether it's EPA or Department of Education, whatever it is, the first thing they want to do is end it, destroy it, close it, shutter it, make it go away, so that the Christian capitalists, who are nothing more than Christian terrorists, can then defile, despoil, ruin everything: education, healthcare, the environment, everything, personal relationships. It's all about destruction and then rebuilding, if you can call it that, along the lines of Christian lies and deception and mythologies. I constantly think, haven't we outgrown this yet? Haven't we outgrown the need to have this crutch, this unbelievable psychological or emotional crutch of religion, just because we're afraid of death? Come on. Come on. What does it take to rid ourselves of this madness, this religious crapola? It's doing nothing. It never has. Positive for the human species. Nothing. It's been all about destruction and hate and poison. And again, people that say, well, Mike, without religion, where will we get our moral training or our ethical training? Oh, please, come on. Some of the greatest moralists or ethicists or people who had brilliant ideas on how to live a successful life existed before Christianity ever came into being, or any other religion. But I digress again. So, in a statement, the senior advisor to the House Accountability War Room said if this woman is installed as chair of the House Education Labor Committee, she has made clear her top priorities are defunding the Department of Education and keeping students saddled with student debt, and to continue to line the pockets of these corrupt, for-profit so-called colleges. End quote. Zach Petkanis, that's senior advisor to the House Accountability War Room. That's an independent group of democratically aligned strategists that recently formed to try to keep tabs on these extremist Christian devils that are about to take over the new House majority. So this is just yet another example of how these Christian fascists, who still like to call themselves Republicans, how when they do get a chance to govern, they don't govern. They try to destroy. This incoming House of Representatives, boy, do they have destruction on their mind. They just can't wait. And one of the more demonic Christian terrorists who is looking forward to becoming the chair of the House Committee on Education and Labor is this woman, Virginia Fox of North Carolina. She is very much an opponent of Biden's student debt relief plan. She wants to keep kids, young people in debt. Tell me why. Well, there is no reason. She doesn't see the children. She sees the lending institutions that provided the money or the companies that bought the debt and want their interest, the capitalist system. And if that means kids, young people, and not necessarily kids, I'm talking about people in their 20s, 30s, some people into their 40s and 50s still struggling to pay off student loan debt. This is madness. It's insanity, as I have often brought up on this podcast. It's crazy that in this country we charge these kinds of fees to send kids to school to become educated. To do what? To leave the country and take their education somewhere else? No. People in other countries do that. They come here and get educated and for the most part stay here. And American students who get their education here are inclined to stay here. But the Christian terrorists, they don't care about any of that. Get rid of public education because, it may teach history about this country and what the Christians supported during the enslavement of millions of people, or the taking us into wars, or just everything that the Christian capitalists have done. I sometimes wonder how, in the name of God, has even these few shreds of democracy that we still have left have managed to maintain. So now we have Virginia Fox. She wants to be the chair. She's already part of the minority on the House Committee on Education and Labor. She was the leading minority member, and she's top candidate to chair the committee when the demons take over in January. And she's being challenged by another right-wing Christian nutcase. This one is Representative Tim Walberg of Michigan. He's challenging her for the chairmanship. And both of these two crazy people support charter schools and the privatization of public education. And they regularly attack teachers' unions and organized labor in general. Christian demons are all against organized labor. The one institution that provides some sort of resistance and occasionally protection against the real ripping and tearing of capitalism that can be visited upon people, on their families, their relationships, their hopes, their dreams. But, of course, the Christian demons are against all that. Keep them barefoot and pregnant and poverty-stricken, and it'd be much easier to manipulate them, especially if they're uneducated, right? Now, I told you what Zach Petkanis, I guess he must be Greek. He's a senior advisor to the House Accountability War Room, and that is an organization designed to keep track of these crazy jerkwads. He said, quote, "If installed as chair of the House Education Labor Committee, Virginia Fox has made clear her top priorities are defunding the Department of Education and keeping students saddled with student debt and lining the pockets of these corrupt for-profit colleges. This is the same thing that Betsy DeVos, another Christian evangelical maniac, Betsy DeVos, who was Secretary of Education during the Orange Vomits 4 years in destroying the country. Anyway, people who are observing this, they would be mostly progressives, are pointing out the tensions between the House's far-right flank, the Republican. I hate to use that term. I hesitate when I use the term Republican because I don't believe that party exists anymore. But okay, between the House GOP's far-right flank, these tensions, which is corrupt with MAGA energy and hungry for revenge. Revenge for what? For trying to bring justice to this filthy bastard named Donald Trump, I guess. Anyway, those people, and then you have the Republican Party establishment, which includes who? I don't know. Mitt Romney? I don't know. But that, of course, he's a senator, so it wouldn't apply here. But you have these two factors within the dead, rotting, maggot-infested Republican Party, these two factions. The ascendant Christian terrorist part, the MAGA part, the QAnon part, and then these poor walking corpses who represent so-called establishment Republicans in the U.S. House. And, of course, what happens over the next 2 years between these two factions will pretty much reveal to voters just how extreme these Christian demons have become under the influence of Donald Trump and his MAGA supporters and his dress-up little boys who think they're real men and dress up in their uniforms and pretend like they're going to overthrow the government and shit, right? Now, congressional Republicans haven't released a platform, about what they plan on doing the next 2 years because they don't have any plan. There is no plan. There is no plan. And they didn't want to reveal that they have no plan before the midterm elections. And instead, they decided to make the midterm elections a referendum on Joe Biden. And look how well that went over, right? So anyway, back to Mr. Petkanis, who is the head of this progressive organization that keeps a watch on these crazy bastards. He said, quote, Virginia Fox's extreme MAGA positions, which put the interests of the massively wealthy above those of everyday Americans, are an indication of the dangerous level of extremism we can expect from this new House majority across all committees, end quote. And that's very much true. The next 2 years are going to provide we Americans, or us Americans, with a very bumpy ride. It's going to be difficult. But the majority in the House is so slim, I think we can survive this, and thank the goddess that we maintain control of the U.S. Senate. So whatever the House does in their insanity, they can sit on their little committees and jerk each other off if that's what they want to do. But nothing is going to happen without the consent of the Senate, and the Senate is not going to consent with some of this crazy shit. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.